My name is Monica, and I've been cleaning other people's houses for 23 years. At 45, I thought I'd seen everything the wealthy could throw at me. I was wrong. It started on a Tuesday morning when I pulled my beat-up Honda into the circular driveway of the Whitmore estate. The mansion stood like a monument to excess, all marble columns and perfectly manicured gardens. I grabbed my cleaning supplies and headed to the service entrance, just like I had every Tuesday and Friday for the past 8 months. Mrs. Charlotte Whitmore answered the door in her silk robe, cell phone pressed to her ear. She barely glanced at me as she waved me inside. "The nanny quit yesterday," she said, covering the phone. "Keep an eye on the children while you work." That's how I met Emma, Ethan, and Ella, 7-year-old triplets with their father's dark hair and their mother's green eyes. They were sitting at the kitchen counter, still in their pajamas, cereal bowls untouched in front of them. "Are you our new nanny?" Emma asked, her voice small and hopeful. "No, sweetheart. I'm just here to clean." "Oh," her face fell. "Daddy's in Chicago again. Mommy says she's too busy for breakfast." I looked at these 3 beautiful children, abandoned in their palace, and something twisted in my chest. My own daughter Jasmine was grown and married now, but I remembered those mornings when she needed me most. "Well," I said, setting down my supplies, "how about I make you some real breakfast while I'm here?" Their faces lit up like Christmas morning. For the next hour, I cooked pancakes while they chattered about everything and nothing. They helped me flip the pancakes, getting flour in their hair and syrup on their fingers. They laughed at my stories and begged for more. When Mrs. Whitmore finally appeared, dressed for tennis, she seemed surprised to find her children happy and fed. "Oh, good. They're taken care of." She grabbed her purse and keys. "I'll be back by 3, maybe 4. The children's faces fell again as she left without kissing them goodbye. That became our routine. I'd arrive to find 3 lonely children and leave them fed, happy, and loved. Mrs. Whitmore was always rushing off to some charity luncheon or spa appointment. Mr. Whitmore was perpetually traveling for business. The children clung to me like I was their lifeline. By Christmas, something had shifted. Emma started calling me Mama Monica. The boys followed suit. I corrected them gently at first, but Mrs. Whitmore didn't seem to notice or care. "They're just children," I told myself. "They don't understand." But deep down, I loved hearing it. These weren't my children, but they needed me in a way that felt achingly familiar. I started bringing them little gifts. Books from the library, homemade cookies, pictures Jasmine had drawn when she was their age. If you're enjoying this story, please subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. We have so many more incredible stories to share with you. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I love hearing from viewers all around the world. Everything changed on Valentine's Day. I was in the kitchen preparing lunch when I heard Mrs. Whitmore on the phone with her sister. "The children are obsessed with that maid," she said, her voice sharp with irritation. "It's getting ridiculous. They barely acknowledge me anymore." "Why don't you just fire her?" her sister suggested. "Because she's the best help I've ever had. The house is spotless, and she keeps the children occupied. But this attachment thing has to stop." My hands trembled as I continued chopping vegetables. I knew this day would come. I'd gotten too close, loved too much. In my world, that was always a mistake. That afternoon, Mrs. Whitmore called me into her office. "Monica, we need to discuss boundaries." "Yes, ma'am. The children are becoming too dependent on you. From now on, stick to cleaning. Don't engage with them beyond basic supervision." My heart cracked, but I nodded. "I understand." "Good. I'm hosting a dinner party this weekend. Some very important people will be here, including my husband's business partners. I need everything perfect." For the rest of the week, I followed her rules. When the children ran to me with scraped knees or homework questions, I gently redirected them to their mother. When they begged me to read them stories, I reminded them I was there to clean. They didn't understand. Emma started crying every morning when I arrived. Ethan became withdrawn. Ella stopped eating. Mrs. Whitmore grew more frustrated by the day. Saturday arrived with its promised dinner party. 20 guests in expensive suits and glittering jewelry filled the dining room. I served silently, invisible in my black uniform. Just another piece of furniture in their world. I was clearing the soup course when I heard Emma's voice from the doorway. "Mama Monica?" The entire table fell silent. 20 pairs of eyes turned to look at the small girl in pink pajamas, then at me, the black maid holding their empty bowls. Mrs. Whitmore's face went white, then red. "Emma, go back to your room immediately." But Emma ran straight to me, wrapping her arms around my legs. "I had a bad dream. I need my mama." And then, in front of all those important people, this 7-year-old white child looked up at me with complete love and trust and said the words that would change everything. "I told Daddy you're the best mama in the whole world." The silence in that room was deafening, but what happened next would shake the very foundations of the Whitmore empire. The crystal chandelier above us might as well have crashed to the floor. Mrs. Whitmore's face cycled through shock, embarrassment, and pure rage in the span of seconds. Her husband's business partners exchanged uncomfortable glances while their wives whispered behind their hands. Mr. James Whitmore, who I'd only seen in passing during his brief stops home, stood slowly from the head of the table. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 40s, with kind eyes that seemed genuinely surprised by his daughter's declaration. "Emma, sweetheart," he said gently, "why don't you come here?" But Emma only held me tighter. "I want Mama Monica to tuck me in. She reads the best stories." "For God's sake," Mrs. Whitmore hissed, standing abruptly. "Monica, remove that child from this room immediately." I knelt down to Emma's level, my heart breaking. "Come on, baby, let's get you back to bed." "Will you read to me?" she whispered. Before I could answer, Mrs. Whitmore's voice cut through the air like a blade. "Absolutely not. Monica, you're dismissed for the evening. Emma, go to your room, now." The little girl's eyes filled with tears, but she obeyed her mother. As she walked toward the door, she turned back to me. "I love you, Mama Monica." The words hung in the air like an accusation. I felt every eye in that room burning into me as I gathered my cleaning supplies and headed for the kitchen. Behind me, I could hear Mrs. Whitmore's brittle laugh as she tried to salvage the evening. Children, you know, such vivid imaginations. But I also heard Mr. Whitmore's voice, quieter, asking someone, "Who exactly is Monica?" I was loading my supplies into my car when I heard footsteps on the gravel. James Whitmore approached, his tie loosened, looking tired and confused. "Monica, right?" He extended his hand. "I'm James. I don't think we've been properly introduced." I shook his hand cautiously. "Mr. Whitmore, I'm sorry about the scene in there. It won't happen again." He studied my face in the dim porch light. "How long have you been working for us?" 8 months, sir." "And my children?" "They've grown attached to you." It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "Yes, sir. I tried to maintain boundaries, but they're 7 years old, and they need someone." He ran a hand through his dark hair. "I know I'm not home enough. Charlotte has her own commitments. The children go through nannies like tissues. They're good kids," I said carefully. "They just need attention." He was quiet for a long moment. "Emma called you the best mama in the whole world." My throat tightened. "Mr. Whitmore, I never encouraged." "I believe you." He looked back at the house where light spilled from the dining room windows. "But Charlotte's not going to let this go. You should know that." He was right. Monday morning, I arrived to find the locks changed. I knocked on the service door, then the front door. Finally, Mrs. Whitmore appeared, still in her robe, her face cold as winter. "Your services are no longer required." "Ma'am, You've overstepped boundaries, Monica. Badly. The children are confused enough without some maid playing house with them." The word maid came out like a slur. I'd been called worse, but somehow, after months of Emma's hugs and Ethan's laughter and Ella's bedtime stories, it cut deeper than usual. "I'd like to say goodbye to the children." "Absolutely not. You're to have no further contact with them." "Is that clear?" Through the window, I could see 3 small faces pressed against the glass upstairs. Emma was crying. The boys looked bewildered. My heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. "Crystal clear," I managed. I drove home to my small apartment and cried for the first time in years. Not for the lost job, I'd find another, but for those 3 babies who would wake up tomorrow wondering where their Mama Monica had gone. My daughter Jasmine called that evening. "Mama, you sound terrible. What's wrong?" I told her everything. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Those people don't deserve you," she said finally. "But those babies needed you. You did nothing wrong by loving them. Love doesn't pay the bills, baby girl. No, but it matters. And maybe this isn't over. She was more right than either of us knew. 3 days later, I was at my new job, a small office building downtown, when my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. Monica? This is James Whitmore. My pulse jumped. Mr. Whitmore, how did you get my number? From the agency. Listen, I need to talk to you. Can you meet me somewhere? Somewhere private? Every instinct told me to say no. Nothing good could come from secret meetings with wealthy white men. But something in his voice made me pause. There's a coffee shop on 5th Street, Murphy's. I know it. 1 hour? I arrived early, choosing a corner booth where I could see the door. James Whitmore walked in exactly on time, looking around nervously before spotting me. He'd traded his expensive suit for jeans and a sweater, but he still looked out of place in the modest cafe. "Thank you for coming," he said, sliding into the booth across from me. "I wasn't sure you would. I almost didn't." He ordered coffee. I stuck with water. When the waitress left, he leaned forward. "The children are falling apart," he said without preamble. "Emma hasn't stopped crying. Ethan won't eat. Ella's been having nightmares. Charlotte hired a new nanny, but they won't even look at her." My heart clenched. "I'm sorry to hear that." "Are you?" His eyes searched mine. "Because Charlotte seems to think you encourage their attachment on purpose. She thinks you were trying to replace her." "That's not true." "I didn't think so." He sipped his coffee, studying me. "Tell me about yourself, Monica. You have children?" "A daughter. She's 24, married, lives in Atlanta." "So you know what it's like to be a mother?" "Yes, sir." "And you loved my children?" It wasn't a question, but the truth was written all over my face. "Yes, sir, I did." He nodded slowly. "I've been doing some thinking, some research too. The agency speaks very highly of you. Perfect references, never missed a day. Clients love you. But more than that, you gave my children something they've never had before." "What's that?" "Unconditional love." His voice cracked slightly. "Charlotte loves them, in her way. But it comes with conditions. Performance, appearance, behavior. They have to earn it every day." I didn't know what to say to that. "I want to make you an offer," he continued. "Not as a maid, as their nanny. Full-time. Good salary, benefits, your own apartment above the garage if you want it. Complete authority over their care and education." I stared at him. "Mr. Whitmore, your wife made it very clear. My wife doesn't make the hiring decisions. I do." His jaw was set with determination. "Those are my children too, and they deserve to be happy." It was everything I could have wanted. A chance to be with Emma, Ethan, and Ella every day. To watch them grow, help them learn, be the mother figure they desperately needed. But I'd lived in this world long enough to know that some offers were too good to be true. "What's the catch?" I asked. His smile was grim. "Charlotte will make your life hell. She'll do everything in her power to get rid of you. And she has more power than you might think." I thought about Emma's tears, about Ethan's quiet withdrawal, about Ella's nightmare-filled nights. Then I thought about my own daughter, how fierce I'd been in protecting her, how far I'd have gone to keep her safe and loved. "When do I start?" I said. But as I watched relief flood James Whitmore's face, I had no idea that accepting his offer would set in motion events that would expose secrets, shatter lives, and force me to fight the biggest battle of my life. I moved into the apartment above the garage on a Sunday, while Mrs. Whitmore was at her yoga retreat in Napa. James helped me carry my boxes upstairs, and I tried not to notice how carefully he'd avoided telling his wife about our arrangement until after I was settled in. The apartment was small but comfortable: bedroom, bathroom, kitchenette, and a sitting area with windows overlooking the garden. More importantly, it had a perfect view of the children's playroom windows. "The kids don't know yet," James said, setting down my last box. "I thought maybe you could surprise them when they get home from school tomorrow." I unpacked quickly, hanging my few dresses in the closet and arranging my photographs on the dresser. Jasmine's wedding picture, my mother before she passed, a snapshot of myself from nursing school, back when I'd dreamed of something different. That evening, I watched from my window as James tucked the children into bed. I could see Emma clutching a stuffed elephant I'd given her months ago, the one Mrs. Whitmore had tried to throw away. The sight made my heart both sore and ache. Monday morning came gray and drizzly. I waited in the kitchen, having prepared the children's favorite breakfast, chocolate chip pancakes with fresh fruit. I heard their footsteps on the stairs, Emma's voice asking their father why he was smiling so much. They rounded the corner and froze. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. Then Emma screamed, not in fear, but in pure joy. "Mama Monica!" All three children launched themselves at me, and I caught them in the biggest hug of my life. Ella was crying, Ethan was talking a mile a minute, and Emma just kept saying, "You came back, you came back, you came back," over and over. "I'm not going anywhere," I promised, and meant it with every fiber of my being. The first week was magical. I woke them gently each morning, made them healthy breakfasts, walked them to the school bus, and was waiting with snacks when they returned. We did homework together at the kitchen table, played games in the backyard, and I read them stories before bed. They bloomed like flowers after rain. James watched it all with amazement. "I'd forgotten they could be this happy," he told me one evening. "Thank you." But I knew the real test was coming. Mrs. Whitmore was due back from her retreat Friday night. I was helping Emma with her spelling homework when I heard the front door slam. The children looked up nervously. They knew that sound. Heavy footsteps clicked across the marble foyer, growing closer. Charlotte Whitmore appeared in the kitchen doorway like an avenging angel. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled despite her travels, her white pantsuit immaculate. But her eyes were Arctic cold. "What is this?" she demanded, looking from me to the children to the homework scattered across the table. "Welcome home, honey," James said, appearing behind her. "How was Napa?" "Don't." Her voice could have frozen fire. "Don't you dare pretend this is normal. What is she doing in my house?" "Monica is the children's new nanny," James said calmly. "We discussed this. We discussed nothing." Charlotte's composure cracked. "You hired the maid behind my back while I was gone?" "I hired someone who loves our children." Emma shrank against my side. Ethan's pencil shook in his small hand. Ella started to whimper. These children had heard their parents fight before, but never about them so directly. "Kids," I said softly, "why don't you go play in the living room for a few minutes?" They scattered gratefully. Charlotte watched them go, her face a mask of barely controlled fury. "How dare you dismiss my children from their own kitchen?" she hissed. "Charlotte, that's enough," James warned. But she was just getting started. "Do you have any idea what people will say? Our children being raised by her?" The word hung in the air like poison. I'd heard it before, of course, in the careful way some employers introduced me to their friends, in the surprised looks when I spoke with perfect grammar, in the assumptions about my education, my background, my worth. "By someone who loves them," James said firmly. "That's what people will say." "Love?" Charlotte laughed bitterly. "James, she's the help. This isn't some fairy tale where the servant becomes family. This is business. Not to our children, it isn't." I stood slowly, my dignity wrapped around me like armor. "Maybe I should go." "No," James said quickly. "You're not going anywhere." "Oh yes, she is," Charlotte snapped. "Pack your things, you're fired." "You can't fire her," James said. "She works for me." The silence that followed was electric with tension. I could see 20 years of marriage cracking between them, like ice on a frozen lake. "We'll see about that," Charlotte said finally. She turned to me, her smile sharp as glass. "Enjoy it while it lasts, Monica, because I promise you this little fantasy is about to end." She swept from the room, leaving us in uncomfortable silence. James ran his hands through his hair, looking older than his years. "I'm sorry," he said. "She'll calm down." But I'd seen that look in Charlotte's eyes. She wouldn't calm down. She'd escalate, and I'd become the battlefield on which their marriage would be fought. The children crept back into the kitchen, sensing the storm had passed. Emma took my hand. "Are you going to leave again, Mama Monica?" "No, baby. I'm staying right here." I meant it. But as I tucked them into bed that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that Charlotte Whitmore was planning something that would test every promise I'd made. I was right. It started small. My car tires, mysteriously flat one morning. The credit card company calling about suspicious activity on my account. Turned out someone had reported my card stolen. My phone service cut off due to billing irregularities that took days to resolve. Then things escalated. I came home from the grocery store to find my apartment door standing open, my belongings scattered. Nothing valuable was missing, but the message was clear. You're not safe here. James was horrified when I told him. She wouldn't, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Wouldn't she? The breaking point came 2 weeks later. I was at the park with the children when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Jasmine's number, but the voice on the other end was a stranger. Ms. Johnson, this is Detective Rivera with Atlanta PD. I'm calling about your daughter. My world stopped spinning. What about my daughter? She's been arrested on drug charges, possession with intent to distribute. She's asking for bail money. The phone slipped from my numb fingers. This couldn't be happening. Jasmine had never touched drugs in her life. She was a teacher, for God's sake, working with special needs children. Mama Monica? Emma tugged on my sleeve. What's wrong? You look scared. I looked down at 3 worried little faces and felt my heart break all over again. I had to go to Atlanta. I had to help my daughter, but leaving meant abandoning these children to their cold, distant mother. James found me crying in my apartment 2 hours later. It's not true, I sobbed. Someone planted those drugs. Someone who wants me gone. He held me while I cried, and I felt the strength in his arms, smelled his cologne, noticed how his presence made me feel safe in a way I hadn't in years. It was dangerous territory for a black woman in my position, and I knew it. But in that moment, I needed someone to hold me up. I have to go to her, I whispered. She's my baby. I know, he said. We'll figure this out. But as I booked a flight to Atlanta that night, I knew Charlotte had won this round. She'd found my weakness and exploited it perfectly. What I didn't know was that she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated how far James would go to protect what he'd come to love, and she had no idea what she'd set in motion. Atlanta's muggy heat hit me like a wall when I stepped off the plane. I hadn't been back to my hometown in 3 years, not since my mother's funeral. The city felt foreign now, all gleaming towers and construction cranes where familiar neighborhoods used to be. The Fulton County Jail looked exactly like what it was, a place where dreams went to die. I sat in the waiting room for 2 hours before they brought Jasmine out. My strong, beautiful daughter looked small and frightened in her orange jumpsuit, her usually perfect hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. "Mama," she whispered, and fell into my arms. "It's going to be okay," I promised, though I had no idea how. The evidence was overwhelming. Police had found 2 ounces of cocaine in her car during a routine traffic stop. Her fingerprints were on the baggie. Her story, that she'd never seen the drugs before, that someone must have planted them, sounded desperate even to my ears. But I knew my daughter. I'd raised her to be honest, to work hard, to stay away from drugs and the people who sold them. This wasn't her. "Who did this to you, baby?" I asked during our brief visit. "I don't know, Mama. But right before they arrested me, I got a phone call. A woman with a fancy accent. She said I should tell my mother to stay away from children that don't belong to her." My blood turned to ice. Charlotte. It had to be. But how could a woman in California orchestrate something like this in Georgia? The answer came from an unexpected source. Jasmine's court-appointed lawyer was a tired-looking woman named Sarah Chen, who pulled me aside after our meeting. "Your daughter's case is weird," she said bluntly. "The drugs were high-quality stuff, way more expensive than street dealers usually carry. And the arrest? Let me guess. Someone called in an anonymous tip?" I nodded. "Someone wanted her caught. Someone with money and connections." She studied my face. "You work for wealthy people, don't you?" "Yes. Any of them have reason to want leverage over you?" I thought about Emma calling me Mama in front of all those important people. About Charlotte's rage, her promise that my fantasy would end. About the strange coincidence of timing. "Maybe," I said. Sarah Chen's expression hardened. "Then your daughter is a pawn in someone else's game, and that pisses me off." I called James from my hotel room that night. He sounded exhausted. "How are the children?" I asked. "Missing you terribly. Charlotte hired a new nanny, some British woman with credentials from the finest families. The kids won't even talk to her. And you?" There was a long pause. "I miss you too, Monica." The way he said my name sent warmth through my chest, followed immediately by fear. I was falling for a married white man whose wife was destroying my family. This could only end in disaster. "James, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Anything. Does Charlotte have connections in Atlanta? People who could arrange things?" Another pause, longer this time. Her brother lives there, Richard Manning. He's not a good man. Why? Richard Manning. I wrote the name down, though I didn't recognize it. Just curious. But Sarah Chen did recognize it when I called her the next morning. Richard Manning runs the biggest law firm in the Southeast, she said. Corporate stuff mostly, but he's got his fingers in everything, including the DA's office. Is that legal? Is water wet? Of course it's not legal, but proving it is another matter. She paused. Monica, if this guy is involved, your daughter is in serious trouble. He's got judges in his pocket, prosecutors on his payroll, but what? He's also incredibly arrogant. Men like that always leave trails because they don't think anyone would dare come after them. I spent the next 3 days learning everything I could about Richard Manning. He was Charlotte's older brother, a man who'd built his fortune on political connections and moral flexibility. His law firm had been investigated twice for corruption, but never charged. His clients included politicians, real estate developers, and at least one suspected organized crime boss. More importantly, he had a reputation for doing favors for family members. Expensive favors that came with no questions asked. On Thursday, I got the call that changed everything. Sarah Chen was breathless with excitement. Monica, we got lucky. The arresting officer, Detective Williams, turns out he's got a gambling problem. Lost his house last year, wife left him, the whole sad story. But 3 days before he arrested your daughter, he paid off all his debts, $40,000 in cash. Someone paid him to plant the drugs? That's what it looks like. And I think I know who. She sent me security camera footage from a parking garage downtown. The video was grainy, but clear enough to show a well-dressed woman handing an envelope to a man who looked suspiciously like Detective Williams. The woman's face was partially obscured, but I'd know that perfect blonde hair anywhere. Charlotte Whitmore had come to Atlanta personally to destroy my daughter. I called James immediately. That's impossible, he said. Charlotte was at her book club that night. She was home by 10. James, I have video. Let me see it. I sent him the footage and waited. 5 minutes later, my phone rang. Jesus Christ! His voice was hollow. How could she do this? How could she destroy an innocent girl just to get back at you? Because your children love me more than they love her, I said simply. And she can't stand it. Monica, I'm so sorry. I never thought, I'll fix this. I'll make her fix this. How? I don't know yet, but I will. That night, I lay in my hotel bed staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. I had evidence that Charlotte had framed my daughter, but proving it in court would be nearly impossible. Richard Manning's influence ran too deep, and I was just a black maid from California with no money and no connections. But I had something Charlotte didn't count on. I had a man who loved his children more than he feared his wife, and I was beginning to suspect that James Whitmore had more power than even Charlotte realized. My phone buzzed with a text message. Get some sleep. Tomorrow, we go to war. James. I smiled for the first time in days. Charlotte Whitmore had made one crucial mistake. She'd assumed that destroying my family would make me give up and disappear. Instead, she just made me dangerous. The next morning, I got a call that changed everything again. This time, the voice on the other end was one I didn't expect. Monica, this is Detective Rivera. The real Detective Rivera, Atlanta PD. I think we need to talk. Detective Maria Rivera was nothing like I'd expected. She was young, maybe early 30s, with sharp eyes and an intensity that reminded me of my daughter when she was determined about something. We met at a small diner near the airport, away from the courthouse and prying eyes. I've been investigating police corruption in my department for 2 years, she said without preamble, sliding a thick folder across the table. Detective Williams is dirty, but he's small time. I've been trying to catch whoever's been paying him. I opened the folder. Inside were photographs, bank records, and surveillance images dating back months. Williams meeting with various people, always receiving envelopes, always looking nervous. This is your daughter's case, Rivera said, pointing to a photo dated 3 days before Jasmine's arrest. But look at this one. She showed me another image. This one taken 2 weeks earlier. Same parking garage, same Detective Williams. But this time, the person handing him money wasn't Charlotte. It was Richard Manning himself. He's been using Williams to plant evidence for months, Rivera explained. Mostly corporate espionage stuff, discrediting business rivals. But your daughter's case was personal. How do you know all this? She smiled grimly. Because Williams got scared. Manning's been asking him to do bigger and bigger jobs, and Williams knows he's in over his head. So he came to me. He wants to make a deal. My heart started pounding. What kind of deal? Full cooperation. Names, dates, bank records, everything. In exchange for immunity and witness protection. And my daughter? All charges dropped. Immediately. I stared at the folder, hardly daring to believe it. What's the catch? The catch is that we need more than Williams's testimony to make charges stick against Manning. We need the person who hired him to come forward. We need Charlotte Whitmore. I laughed bitterly. She'll never confess. Maybe not willingly, but people like her always think they're smarter than everyone else. Sometimes you can trick them into revealing the truth. Rivera leaned forward, her eyes bright with possibility. Monica, how would you feel about wearing a wire? 6 hours later, I was on a plane back to California with a tiny recording device taped under my bra and a phone number for an FBI agent who specialized in interstate corruption cases. My daughter was free on bail. The charges dropped pending the completion of Rivera's investigation. But my real work was just beginning. James picked me up at the airport. He looked haggard, like he hadn't slept in days. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his usually perfect hair was disheveled. Thank God you're back, he said, pulling me into his arms right there in the terminal. I was afraid. That I'd run? I pulled back to look at him. I'm not running from anything anymore, James. It's time to fight. We drove back to the estate in comfortable silence, both of us lost in thought. The children were at school, but I could see signs of their unhappiness everywhere. Emma's drawings crumpled in the trash, Ethan's favorite books abandoned on the floor. Ella's dolls lined up facing the window like they were watching for me. How bad has it been? I asked. Bad. Emma cries every night. The boys barely speak. And Charlotte. He shook his head. She's been different since Atlanta. Jumpy, secretive, making phone calls at all hours. Guilty conscience, I said. Maybe. Or maybe she's planning something else. He was right to be worried. That evening, after the children had gone to bed and James had retreated to his office for a conference call with Tokyo, Charlotte knocked on my apartment door. She stood on my small landing in a silk evening gown, diamond earrings catching the porch light. She looked beautiful and dangerous, like a snake in designer clothing. May I come in? I stepped aside, my hand instinctively moving to where the recording device was hidden. Of course, Mrs. Whitmore. She glided past me into my small living room, her critical gaze taking in my modest furniture, my discount store decorations. Cozy, she said, making the word sound like an insult. It suits me. She turned to face me, and I saw something new in her expression. Not just anger or contempt, but fear. I know what you're thinking, she said. That you've won. That my children love you more than they love me. That my husband is infatuated with you. That you're indispensable to this family. I said nothing, just waited. The recording device felt warm against my skin. But you're forgetting something important, Monica. You're forgetting your place. Her voice was silk over steel. You're the help. That's all you'll ever be, and help can be replaced. Is that a threat? She laughed, a sound like breaking crystal. It's a reality check. Do you really think James will choose you over me? Over his reputation, his business connections, his social standing? She moved closer, her perfume cloying in the small space. I know about your daughter's little trouble in Atlanta. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I kept my voice steady. What about it? Drugs are such nasty business, aren't they? So unpredictable. One minute someone is clean, the next minute they're caught with enough cocaine to put them away for years. Her smile was razor sharp. Amazing how these things happen. Yes, I said carefully. Amazing. Of course, sometimes these problems can be solved. A word in the right ear, a favor called in. My family has connections everywhere, you know. Atlanta, especially. She was confessing. Actually confessing on tape. I fought to keep the excitement off my face. That's very generous of your family. We take care of our own, but we also protect ourselves from threats. She stepped even closer, close enough that I could see the calculation in her green eyes. Your daughter's freedom is fragile, Monica. So very fragile. One phone call from me, and she could find herself in even worse trouble. Assault on a police officer, maybe. Or trafficking. Much more serious charges. I see. I thought you might. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to quit. Tonight, you're going to tell James that you've realized this situation is inappropriate, that you can't continue to work for a family where the boundaries have become so blurred. Her voice dripped poison on the last word. And then you're going to disappear. Move somewhere far away. Start over. And if I don't? Her smile widened. Then your daughter will disappear. Oh, not literally. That would be too obvious. But she'll find herself facing charges that will ruin her life. Her teaching career, her marriage, her future, all gone. And there won't be any convenient evidence to clear her this time. The apartment fell silent except for the ticking of my cheap wall clock. I looked at this woman, this mother who had everything and valued nothing, and felt something cold and hard settle in my chest. You're right about one thing, Mrs. Whitmore, I said finally. What's that? I have been forgetting my place. I moved to the door and opened it. My place is with children who need love, who deserve better than a mother who sees them as accessories to her perfect life. Charlotte's composure cracked slightly. You're making a mistake. No, the mistake was thinking I could coexist with you. But there isn't room in this house for both of us. She swept past me toward the door, then paused on the threshold. You have until tomorrow night to be gone, Monica. After that, I make my phone call. I'll keep that in mind. After she left, I sat in my small living room and replayed the conversation in my head. She'd given me everything I needed, a clear confession of conspiracy, witness intimidation, and abuse of power. But more than that, she'd shown me who she really was, a woman so threatened by love that she'd destroy innocent people to eliminate it. My phone buzzed. A text from James. Conference call ran late. Everything okay? I looked around my little apartment, at the photos of Jasmine, at the children's drawings taped to my refrigerator, at the life I'd built in the margins of someone else's world. Everything's perfect, I texted back. See you in the morning. But I had no intention of waiting until morning. It was time to end this war once and for all. I called Detective Rivera. We got her, I said when she answered. Every word. Beautiful. Can you get to a secure location? We need to extract that recording before she has a chance to make good on her threats. I'll figure something out. Monica, be careful. People like Charlotte Whitmore are most dangerous when they're cornered. I looked out my window at the main house, where lights still glowed in the children's bedrooms. Somewhere behind those windows were 3 babies who'd called me Mama, who'd given me a purpose I'd thought was lost forever. Let her be dangerous, I said. She's not the only one who knows how to fight. But as I prepared to leave my apartment, I had no idea that Charlotte's next move would put those children and James in danger beyond anything I'd imagined. I was packing the recording device into my purse when I heard the screaming. It came from the main house, high and terrified, Emma's voice cutting through the night air like a siren. I ran from my apartment without thinking, my heart hammering as more voices joined in. Ethan shouting, Ella crying, and underneath it all, the acrid smell of smoke. The kitchen door was unlocked. I burst through to find chaos. Smoke was pouring from the direction of the living room, and the children were huddled at the bottom of the staircase in their pajamas, Emma clutching her stuffed elephant while the boys stood protectively on either side of her. Mama Monica! Emma sobbed when she saw me. The house is on fire. I swept all 3 of them into my arms, checking quickly for injuries. They seemed unharmed, but terrified. Where are your parents? Mommy went out for dinner, Ethan said. Daddy's in his office. We couldn't wake him up. My blood turned to ice. James's office was on the ground floor, down the hall toward where the smoke was thickest. Listen to me, I said, kneeling to their level. I need you to go outside right now, all the way to the garden, by the fountain. Stay together and don't move until I come get you. But Daddy, Ella started. I'll get Daddy. Go. Now. They ran toward the back door while I grabbed a dish towel and soaked it in the sink. The smoke was getting thicker, and I could see the orange glow of flames at the end of the hallway. James's office door was closed. I tried the handle, locked from the inside. I pounded on the wood. James! James! Wake up! The house is on fire! No response. The smoke was making my eyes water, my lungs burn. I looked around desperately and spotted a fire extinguisher mounted on the wall. I grabbed it and smashed the glass panel next to James's door, reaching in to flip the lock. He was slumped over his desk, unconscious. An empty whiskey glass sat next to his computer, and something about the scene felt wrong. James rarely drank, and never to excess. I shook him hard. "James, wake up!" His eyelids fluttered, and he mumbled something incoherent. I could smell something strange on his breath, not just alcohol, but something chemical. Sweet. He'd been drugged. The realization hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't an accident. Someone had drugged James and set the fire, leaving him unconscious in a room filling with smoke. Someone had tried to kill him. The flames were getting closer. I could hear sirens in the distance, but they might not arrive in time. I hooked my arms under James's shoulders and pulled with all my strength. He was dead weight, easily twice my size, but adrenaline gave me power I didn't know I had. Somehow, I managed to drag him down the hallway and out the back door. The children ran to us as I collapsed on the lawn, James's unconscious form beside me. "Is Daddy okay?" Emma whispered. "He's going to be fine," I panted, though I wasn't sure that was true. I could see fire trucks turning into the driveway, their red lights painting everything in hellish colors. The next hour was a blur of EMTs, firefighters, and police officers. James was rushed to the hospital with suspected smoke inhalation and possible drug overdose. The children clung to me as we watched flames consume half their home, including James's office and most of the first floor. Fire Chief Martinez found me sitting on the ambulance bumper with Emma in my lap, and the boys pressed against my sides. "Ma'am, I need to ask you some questions." "Of course. You were first on the scene?" I heard the children screaming. "I live in the apartment above the garage." He made notes on his clipboard. "The fire started in the living room. Looks like an accelerant was used, probably gasoline. This wasn't an accident." I wasn't surprised, but hearing it confirmed still sent chills down my spine. "Someone tried to burn down the house?" "More than that. The office door was locked from the inside. If you hadn't broken in and pulled Mr. Whitmore out..." He shook his head. "This was attempted murder." Emma whimpered against my chest. I stroked her hair, trying to process what had happened. Someone had drugged James, locked him in his office, and set the house on fire. Someone who wanted him dead, and didn't care if 3 innocent children died too. Someone like Charlotte. But where was she? Her car wasn't in the driveway, and according to the children, she'd left hours ago for a dinner engagement. "Chief Martinez?" A young firefighter approached with a concerned expression. "We found something in the debris you need to see." They led us to what had been the living room. In the charred remains of an elegant sofa, something metallic glinted in the flashlight beam. "Looks like a gas can," the firefighter said. "Cheap hardware store brand. But here's the weird part. Whoever set this fire didn't try to hide the evidence. It's like they wanted us to know it was arson. Or like they wanted us to blame someone else, I thought. Someone with access to the house, who'd been seen arguing with the family, who had motive to hurt them. Someone like me." My phone rang. Detective Rivera's number. "Monica? I just heard about the fire on the police scanner. Are you all right?" "We're okay, but James is in the hospital. Someone drugged him and tried to burn him alive." "Jesus! Where's Charlotte?" I looked around the chaos of emergency vehicles and personnel. "I don't know. She wasn't here when it happened." "Perfect alibi," Rivera said grimly. "Monica, you need to be very careful. This feels like escalation to me. Someone's getting desperate. The children will be safe, but you need to think about yourself. If Charlotte is behind this, she's not going to stop until you're gone, one way or another." After the call ended, I looked down at the 3 small faces depending on me. They'd lost their home, their father was in the hospital, and their mother was nowhere to be found. I was all they had, which meant I was exactly where Charlotte wanted me to be. A police officer approached with a clipboard. "Ma'am, I need to get your statement about tonight's events." As I recounted finding the children, rescuing James, and discovering the locked office door, I noticed a familiar car pulling into the driveway. Charlotte's white Mercedes, pristine and unsmudged by smoke. She stepped out wearing a black cocktail dress and pearls, her makeup perfect despite the late hour. When she saw the burned house and emergency vehicles, she gasped and pressed her hand to her throat, the picture of a devastated wife and mother. but I caught something else in her expression as her eyes swept the scene. Not shock or grief, but calculation. She was assessing how well her plan had worked. Her gaze found me sitting with the children, and for just a moment, her mask slipped. I saw frustration there, and rage. I was supposed to be dead or blamed for this. Instead, I was the hero who'd saved her family. "My babies!" she cried, running toward us. "Oh my God, are you hurt?" The children didn't run to her. They pressed closer to me instead, and I saw Charlotte notice. Her jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Where's James?" she demanded. "Hospital," I said. He was drugged. Drugged? Her performance was flawless, exactly the right amount of shock and concern. Who would do such a thing? I met her eyes directly. Someone who wanted him dead. We stared at each other across the smoking ruins of her home, and in that moment, I knew we both understood the same thing. This was no longer about 3 children or a job or even James's affections. This was war, and only one of us would survive it. But as Charlotte knelt to embrace her children, who submitted to her touch but didn't return it, I realized she'd made another crucial mistake. She'd underestimated how far I would go to protect the people I loved, and she had no idea that I had her confession recorded, ready to send to the FBI. The war was about to become very one-sided. St. Mary's Hospital at 3 a.m. was a place of fluorescent lights and antiseptic smells. I sat in the waiting room with Emma curled against my side, both boys asleep in uncomfortable chairs. Charlotte paced near the nurse's station, her designer dress looking increasingly out of place among the hospital's sterile walls. Dr. Patterson emerged from the ICU looking tired but relieved. "Mr. Whitmore is stable. The drug in his system was Rohypnol, what people call a date rape drug. Combined with alcohol, it nearly killed him. If you hadn't found him when you did," he shook his head. "When can we see him?" Charlotte demanded. "He's conscious but groggy. Immediate family only for now." Charlotte shot me a triumphant look and disappeared down the hallway. I stayed with the children, stroking Emma's hair as she dozed fitfully against my shoulder. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Check your email. Rivera." I opened my email app with one hand, careful not to disturb Emma. Rivera had sent me a single attachment, a police report from earlier that evening. The header made my blood freeze. Incident report. Domestic disturbance, 1247 Maple Street, 8:47 p.m. I read quickly. A neighbor had called in a noise complaint about loud voices and breaking glass from Charlotte's dinner location, her sister's house across town. The responding officers had found Charlotte there, visibly intoxicated and agitated, arguing with her sister about family loyalty and taking care of problems. The report noted broken wine glasses and furniture damage. The timestamp showed Charlotte had been there when the fire started, but it was the final line that made my hands shake. Subject repeatedly stated that some people need to learn their place, and problems have a way of solving themselves. She'd created an alibi, but she'd also created evidence. The Rohypnol took time to work, and the fire had been set on a timer. Charlotte could have drugged James before leaving, knowing he'd be unconscious when the flames reached his office. "Mama Monica?" Emma stirred against my side. "Is Daddy going to be okay?" "Yes, sweetheart. He's going to be fine." "What about our house?" I thought about the blackened shell of what had been their home, about the deliberate destruction of their safe space. "We'll figure something out." Charlotte returned 20 minutes later, her perfect composure slightly cracked. "He's asking for you," she said tightly. "I told him you'd gone home, but he's being insistent. I should see him." "Should you?" Her voice was arctic. "Monica, I think recent events have shown how dangerous your presence is for this family. Perhaps it's time to consider whether staying is really in anyone's best interest." Before I could respond, a commotion erupted near the hospital entrance. Detective Rivera strode through the automatic doors, followed by 2 FBI agents and a man I didn't recognize, but whose expensive suit screamed federal prosecutor. Charlotte went white. "Charlotte Whitmore?" Rivera approached with her badge out. "I'm Detective Rivera, Atlanta PD. These are Agents Thompson and Martinez with the FBI. We need to speak with you." "I don't understand. My house just burned down. My husband is in the hospital." "Mrs. Whitmore," Agent Thompson interrupted, "you're under arrest for conspiracy, witness intimidation, interstate corruption, and attempted murder. You have the right to remain silent." The waiting room erupted into chaos. The children woke up screaming as their mother was handcuffed. Hospital security moved to control the scene. Charlotte's voice rose above it all, shrill with panic. "This is insane. I was at my sister's house all evening. Ask her. Call her right now." "We did," Agent Martinez said calmly. "She's very concerned about the conversation you had with her tonight. Something about taking care of the Monica problem once and for all." I watched Charlotte's face cycle through shock, rage, and finally, cold calculation. Even caught red-handed, she was planning her next move. "I want my lawyer," she said. "Richard Manning?" Rivera smiled grimly. "He's being arrested right now in Atlanta. Seems he had a lot to say once we showed him Detective Williams' testimony and the evidence we've collected over the past 6 months." As they led Charlotte away, she looked back at me one final time. "You think you've won," she hissed. "You think you can just take my place, be their mother, steal my life. But you're nothing, Monica. You're just the help, and help can always be replaced." The children were sobbing now, confused and terrified by seeing their mother arrested. I gathered them close, my heart breaking for their trauma even as relief flooded through me. "It's going to be okay," I whispered, though I wasn't sure how. Agent Thompson approached me as the others finished processing the scene. "Ms. Johnson, we're going to need that recording." I handed over the device, my hands shaking slightly. "Will it be enough? Combined with everything else?" "More than enough. Your daughter's charges have been officially dismissed, by the way. She's free to resume her life." Tears I'd been holding back for days finally spilled over. Jasmine was safe. The children were safe. James was alive. But as I looked at 3 traumatized children who just watched their mother arrested for trying to murder their father, I realized our real challenges were just beginning. Dr. Patterson cleared his throat. "Ms. Johnson, Mr. Whitmore is asking for you again. He seems quite agitated." I left the children with a kind nurse and made my way to James's room. He was propped up in bed, oxygen tube under his nose, but his eyes were clear and focused. "Monica." His voice was hoarse from smoke inhalation. "The children?" "Safe. Shaken up, but safe." "Charlotte?" I told him everything. The arrest, the charges, the evidence. He listened in silence, his face growing graver with each revelation. "She tried to kill me," he said finally. "Her own husband. The father of her children. I'm sorry, James. I know this must be—" "No!" His voice was stronger now. "You saved my life. You saved my children. I should be thanking you, not apologizing." He reached for my hand, and I let him take it. His skin was warm, solid, real, alive. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now?" He squeezed my fingers gently. "Now we figure out how to heal. How to help 3 children who've just lost their mother. How to rebuild our lives from the ashes." "Our lives?" He met my eyes directly. "Monica, I've been in love with you for months. I know it's complicated. I know the timing is terrible, but I can't pretend anymore. You're not just the nanny. You're not just the help. You're the woman I want to spend my life with." My heart soared and crashed simultaneously. "James, the children have been through enough trauma. They don't need their father dating their nanny while their mother is in prison." "You're right." He was quiet for a moment. "But they also don't need to lose another mother figure. Whatever happens between us, they need you. I need you." Through the hospital room window, dawn was breaking over the city. A new day, full of possibilities and challenges I couldn't yet imagine. "One day at a time," I said. "One day at a time," he agreed. But as I prepared to return to the children, to face the media circus that would surely follow, to navigate the complex emotions of loving a man whose wife had tried to destroy me, I knew the hardest part was still ahead. Charlotte Whitmore was behind bars, but her legacy of pain and manipulation would take much longer to heal. 6 months later, I stood in the kitchen of our new home, a modest house in the suburbs, far from the mansion's ghosts, watching Emma help her father flip pancakes while the boys set the table. The morning routine had become sacred to us, a daily affirmation that we were still a family, still whole, despite everything we'd survived. Charlotte's trial had been a media sensation. Wealthy socialite attempts murder to frame Black Nanny ran in headlines across the country. The evidence was overwhelming. My recording, Detective Williams' testimony, Richard Manning's desperate plea bargain, and the forensic evidence from the fire. She'd been sentenced to 25 years in federal prison, but the real healing hadn't happened in courtrooms. It had happened in moments like these, around kitchen tables and bedtime stories, in therapy sessions and long conversations about love and loss and what it means to be a family. "Mama Monica," Emma said, sliding a slightly lopsided pancake onto a plate. "Do you think Mommy Charlotte thinks about us in prison?" The question still broke my heart every time one of the children asked it. They'd loved their birth mother, despite her coldness, and losing her had left scars that might never fully heal. "I think she thinks about you every day," I said honestly, "and I think she wishes things had been different." "Do you miss her?" Ethan asked. "I miss the mother you deserved to have," I said, "but I'm grateful every day that I get to love you instead." James looked up from the stove, his eyes warm with an emotion I still marveled at seeing directed toward me. We'd taken things slowly, so slowly that some people wondered if we were together at all. But we'd learned that love built on crisis needed time to become love, built on choice. "Speaking of which," he said, reaching into his pocket, "I have something for all of you." He pulled out a small velvet box, and my heart stopped. The children crowded around as he opened it to reveal not an engagement ring, but 4 matching silver bands, each engraved with a simple word, family. "Monica," he said, taking my hand, "I know we've talked about not rushing into anything legal, but I want you to know that in my heart, we're already married. In my heart, you're already their mother. These rings don't change anything. They just make it official." Emma clapped her hands. "Are we going to have a wedding?" "If Monica says yes," James replied, his eyes never leaving mine. I looked around at these 4 people who'd become my world. At Emma, who still sometimes crawled into my bed after nightmares, but was slowly learning to trust again. At Ethan and Ella, who'd both started calling me Mom without prompting. At James, who'd shown me that love could grow from the ashes of tragedy. "Yes," I whispered, then louder, "Yes." The children cheered, and James slipped the ring onto my finger. It fit perfectly, like it had been made for me, like I'd been made for this family. "There's one more thing," James said. "Monica, I want to adopt you." I stared at him, confused. "What?" "Not legally," he laughed, "but emotionally. You've never had a family that chose you just for being you. You've always been taking care of other people's children, working for other people's dreams. I want you to know that you belong here, not because we need you, but because we love you." Tears spilled down my cheeks as I understood what he meant. For 45 years, I'd been surviving on the margins, earning my place through service, through usefulness, through making myself indispensable. But this family wanted me simply for being Monica. "We love you, Mama Monica," Emma said solemnly. "Not because you cook good food or read good stories, just because you're you. And because you saved Daddy," Ethan added. "And because you make us feel safe," Ella finished. I pulled all 3 children into a hug, breathing in their sunshine and innocent scents, feeling James's arms wrap around all of us. We stood there in our imperfect kitchen, in our imperfect house, a family forged by crisis, but sustained by choice. "I love you all too," I said. More than I ever knew was possible. Later that evening, after the children were asleep and James was reviewing architectural plans for his new business, he'd left corporate law to focus on helping families navigate custody disputes. I found myself on the back porch, looking up at the stars. My phone rang. Jasmine's picture lit up the screen. "Hey, Mama, how did it go?" He proposed, sort of, in his James way. And I said yes, sort of, in my Monica way. She laughed. "I'm so happy for you. You deserve this, you know that?" I'm starting to believe it. "Good, because Marcus and I have news too. We're pregnant." My heart soared. "Baby girl, that's wonderful. I wanted you to be the first to know. And Mama, I want to name her Monica, after the strongest woman I know." I started crying again, the happy tears I'd been shedding a lot lately. "Jasmine, honey, I know you always said you weren't cut out to be anybody's grandmother, but I think you've changed your mind about a lot of things lately." She was right. I had changed. The woman who'd walked into the Whitmore mansion 8 months ago, thinking she was just there to clean, had discovered she was capable of so much more. Love, courage, standing up for what mattered, fighting for family. "Grandma Monica," I said, trying out the sound. "I like it. We talked for another hour about babies and wedding plans and the scholarship fund James and I were establishing for children of domestic workers. When I finally hung up, James appeared beside me with 2 cups of tea. "Penny, for your thoughts?" "I was thinking about stories," I said, "how they have beginnings and middles and ends, but this doesn't feel like an ending." "No, no, it feels like a beginning, like everything before this was just the prologue." He settled beside me on the porch swing, and I curled against his side. Above us, the stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, indifferent to human struggles, but somehow blessing them anyway. "Monica? Thank you." "For what?" "For loving my children, for saving my life, for showing me what family really means." "Thank you for seeing me," I said. For the first time in my life, someone saw me and loved what they found. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the night deepen around us. Somewhere inside the house, one of the children called out in their sleep, not in fear this time, but in dreams. I started to get up to check on them, but James caught my hand. "They're fine," he said. "They know they're safe. They know they're loved." He was right. For the first time in their young lives, Emma, Ethan, and Ella were going to bed knowing that tomorrow would bring the same steady love as today, that the people who tucked them in would still be there when they woke up, that they were home, as was I. "I love you, James Whitmore," I said into the darkness. "I love you too, Monica Johnson. Future Monica Whitmore. Future Mrs. Whitmore," I corrected with a smile. "Future Mom," he said, and the words settled around me like a blessing. Inside the house, our children slept peacefully. Above us, the stars continued their eternal dance. And on a porch in suburban California, 2 people who'd found love in the ruins of someone else's hatred planned their future together, one dream at a time. I'd started this story as their black maid, but when 3 beautiful children called me Mom, I'd become something far more precious. I'd become home.